Welcome to the third Sunday, third candle of Advent. I'm Pastor Kathleen Panning, or sometimes known as the Tilted Halo. And today I'm talking about that third candle on the Advent wreath. It's often called the candle of joy or the shepherd's candle. And it emphasis is on the message that was brought to the shepherds. The angels came to the shepherds and said, "Behold, I bring you good news of great joy, which will be for you and for all people." And so the shepherds were filled with joy at the news of the birth of the Messiah, Jesus, in of all places, a manger in a stable. Not exactly the royal beginnings that one might have imagined for the Messiah, the King, the Great One, God's Savior for the people of Israel, for the whole world. But that is where he started. And it filled the shepherds with such joy that they left their flock, something a shepherd would never have done, and ran into Bethlehem because they were tending flocks outside the city, ran into Bethlehem to find this newborn child. And they were filled with joy, a joy that amazed Mary and presumably also Joseph, for the fact that they came and they sought out this newborn child and his parents to find out what was there. And so this is a day and a candle and a week, in a sense, to talk about joy. And the color for this third candle is often pink, kind of like the color I'm wearing, maybe a little closer to a dusty rose. Sometimes it just kind of varies depending upon the particular candles that somebody has. Excuse me. But that it is often a color of pink to symbolize the joy of the shepherds, to symbolize something a little different than the royal standard of either purple or blue, which is often used instead of purple to differentiate between the colors of Advent and the color for Lent, which is a period before Easter. And that's a whole nother topic. So, but right now we're focused on Advent, the preparations for the coming of the Messiah, past, present, and future as well. And today about the message of joy. So when you think about joy, what does that mean to you? Where do you find joy? Where do you find, another word would be happiness, uh, for yourself? What are the things that bring you joy? If we looked at all the advertisers around these days, we would say that joy comes in things, the things we buy, the things we have, the places we go, the people who are in our lives are all things that bring us joy. And so it all seems like joy comes from the outside in. But is that really true? You know, the shepherds were filled with great joy on hearing this message. And the message was joyful. It was happy. I mean, the whole myriad, whole host of heaven of angels sharing this news. That's pretty darn impressive. Could be awfully scary too. But they were filled with great joy. But that joy was something inside of them. Yes, the message was joyful. The message was happy. The message was greatly important. It was a message that the people of Israel had been hoping for and yearning for and waiting for centuries, for a very long time. And so it's like, now us, we're going to get to see and experience this. Yes, it's a message of great joy. But joy is not an external thing. We can't buy joy. We can't, you know, have the right people in our lives, and that's the reason for our joy. Relationships, yes, they can be happy relationships, hopefully, very happy ones. But the joy is always something inside. It comes from the inside out. And if it doesn't come there, then it's very short lived. It's like, children getting that favorite toy for Christmas. And after a week or two, it's kind of like, oh, so, yeah, I got that. And sometimes for a very young child, rather play with the box than with the contents. And so it's the joy is what we generate from the inside. Years ago, in the early 1990s, I was in a time in my life where there wasn't any joy. I had been told by this new senior pastor of the church that had been serving for close to 5 years, that my services were no longer desired, required, and would no longer be at that church. It was a large congregation, and there were 5 full-time pastors there, including the new senior pastor. So it wasn't like I was the only one, but it was still, I was the only one who was being told, you're leaving, like it or not, you're leaving. Ready or not, you're leaving. I didn't have any joy in me. That was not something I wanted to hear. That was not at all a message I ever expected to hear. It was something I had never heard before in my life. And it brought me very much the opposite of joy. A lot of pain, a lot of questioning of what happened? What does this mean? A feeling like a failure, that I had failed being a pastor. It was not my first position, so I had experience doing this stuff before, not in that size of a congregation, but I had experience as a pastor and I knew I had some good gifts. So why? It didn't make any sense to me, and it certainly did not bring me joy. I didn't find anything in there to be happy about, uh, at least not initially. But a friend, my best friend at the time, found a book in the library, and she came to me a week or so after all of this and put this book in my face and said I had to read it. And I looked at the title, and if it had been given to me by anybody else, I would have been saying, you gotta be nuts. This is some kind of a cruel joke. Because the title said, Happiness is a Choice. I didn't feel like I had any choice of anything to be happy about. I had no job. I had no income. I didn't have any prospects of a position. The denomination I'm part of, it wasn't that I could just go out and stand out my resume and say, hey, here I am, hire me. No, that's not the way my denomination worked. And so the prospects of having a position in the near future was like, you got to be kidding me. So it was, who was I? What was I going to do? Where was I going to get some income? Oh, how was I going to pay my bills? All of those kinds of things were pretty big question marks in my mind. And they did not bring me any joy. And here was a book by an author who was saying happiness is a choice. Was he really serious? And I started reading the book just because it came from this friend, or had been recommended by this friend. And it was a series of 5 shortcuts to happiness. And the shortest of shortcuts, the author, who's Barry Neil Kaufman, the shortest of the shortcuts, he said, is gratitude. And that there's always something to be grateful for. And I'll say more about this in the week to, during the week here to come, but there's always something to be grateful for. And so I started thinking, yeah, right, there's always something to be grateful for. You got to be kidding me. And so I challenged myself. And one of the challenges is to find 3 things every single day to be grateful for. And not always the same 3, like, yeah, I got up this morning. No, not always the same 3. So 3 unique things to the day to be grateful for. And it was tough to begin with. Very honestly, it was tough. But then I realized I had a dog and I was grateful for my dog. I had a place to live and I knew I wasn't going to be kicked out of it anytime, soon. I had some savings, so I was grateful for that. I had the support of my family in the midst of all of this. I was grateful for that. I had the support of my friend, and I was very grateful for that. So the more I started to look for things to be grateful for, the more I found to be grateful for. It's amazing how that happens, you know? Um, things that I usually took for granted. I had food on the table. I could see. I had, there were flowers in the landscape around me. Um, it was all kinds of different things, little things, big things. But there were lots of things to be grateful for. And as I focused on those things, my pain, it didn't just automatically evaporate and, become nothing, but it lessened. And I began to see maybe there was some hope. And maybe it was a good thing I was no longer going to be serving in that church. It had become quite stressful. And that stress was having an effect on my health. And maybe, just maybe, there was something else that God had in store for me. And so I focused on some of those things and found in the midst of everything else that there were reasons for some joy. I could laugh at a funny joke. Wasn't everything all depressing and sad and problematic? Yeah, there were still a lot of things that needed to be dealt with. That's true. But the hope became part of the reality of my days and my week, and glimmers of joy and happiness started to come back. All because of finding things to be grateful for. Joy, it's there when we look for it, when we realize it's something that happiness and that joy is something inside of us. It is not relying on all the things that come to us from outside. There are reasons that we can find joy and happiness in the midst of just about anything. I say just about because there are times where life is just really, really tough. And hey, I get it. I've been there, done that. But even in the midst of those times, as we start to work through some of the pain and the anger, the hurt, the frustrations, the mountain of unknowns and questions that are there, even as we start to work through some of that, there are little pieces, little bits of reasons to be grateful, reasons that, yeah, there's a little bit of joy, even in the midst of the realities of life. The shepherds still had a hard life. Being a shepherd was, in the time of Jesus, was not at all a glorious profession. It was smelly. Being with the sheep, you were outside, sheep and goats. You were outside all of the time. It was dangerous because shepherds had to fight off potential attacks from hyenas, wild dogs, even lions. Yes, actual lions were roaming in the land throughout the land of Israel back in the time of Jesus, and hyenas and jackals and you know, other creatures, snakes, poisonous snakes. And so shepherds had to be prepared to fight them off. Shepherds also had to be prepared to deal with others who would steal the sheep. So it was not a glamorous occupation, but it was a necessary one because was a need for people to tend the sheep. And even in the midst of that, there were reasons for joy, reasons for happiness, reasons to celebrate the news about God's love coming in the birth of a baby lying in a manger. And that's reason for us to have joy too. Even in the midst of the realities of our own lives, in the midst of the reality of your life. Yes, that news is there for you too. God's love is coming into this world for you, for me, for everyone. Yes, everyone. That is reason for joy. So as you go through this week and think about this week, look for, and sometimes it takes actually looking for, but look for reasons to be grateful, reasons for joy, the good things, the little things, the big things in the midst of our lives. And that might mean taking a pause in the midst of all the hectic stuff that goes on at this time of the year and just stepping back and taking a little bit of an inventory of yourself and of your life and what you are focusing your attention on. Focus it on the things, the gifts that God brings to us here and now, the message of God's love for us, for you here and now. And that is reason for joy. So stay tuned. Come for each of the days in this week, and there will be more about the issues and topics of joy and happiness. And I look forward to seeing you. Please leave some comments. Let me know where you find joy, what it is that brings joy, and how you bring joy into this world. So peace and blessings from me, the Tilted Halo. Take care.